Hello and welcome to the Sunset Safari here on SafariLIVE. We are coming to you out of Djuma and Arathusa private game reserves in the world famous Sabi Sand Game Reserve. You're on camera today with myself, Stefan Winterboer, and Tsepiso. And we have got a lady giraffe to open for you with today. You can see how elegant those horn tips are. They are fur covered. And that is why, from this distance, I can tell that she's a lady. Very, very pretty young woman. I say young because she's in very good condition, actually. Generally, when giraffes get a little bit older, they have a variety of different scars and patches of hairless fur all over their, or hairless skin all over their bodies. And that's because they are quite susceptible to mange. Now, we're going to go forward a little bit just so that we can see her. She's now of them here. Let's go a little bit more forward so that we can see them. It is a hot afternoon. You can probably see from our very shiny head. It's about 90 degrees Fahrenheit or 33 or 34 degrees centigrade right now. Oh, we actually have 4 giraffes here. 3 giraffes, excuse me. I'm just going to pass her a little bit. Let's see what she does. Well, they are in typical woodland that we find giraffe in. That's a terminalia thicket that she is walking in at the moment, and they are frequent feeders on terminalia, acacia and coniferas. That is what they enjoy the most, or the corkwoods. One of the few animals that can actually eat a corkwood and find it tasty. And I don't know if you've been told this by the other presenters from time to time, but giraffes have one of the most efficient digestive systems out of any of the ruminants or any of the animals that we find out here. One of the most efficient. They eat less food per kilogram of body weight than any of the other animals around here. They're incredibly good at drawing every last little scrap of nutrients and water out of the food that they eat. The unfortunate cost of that is that they have to eat very high quality food. The nice thing about that is that giraffes are very good indicators, therefore, of the health of your bush. So if you do happen to have an acacia, conifera, terminalia, woodland piece of bush that you call your own, and you have a lot of giraffe that seem to be doing very well in your bush, they are indicator species that things are going very, very well. Now I'm going to turn around. That giraffe looks like she's going to the road, actually. There's a road down there. Let's go forward and see. Kat sent through a comment that says she would kill for those eyelashes, and I absolutely agree with you. I think my wife would agree with you 100% that having eyelashes as long as a giraffe's is definitely beneficial. The reason, of course, that they have those long eyelashes is so that they can feed as deep as they possibly can into a bush. And the eyelashes are there to let their lids know when to close, so that they can close their eyelids tightly in case a thorn pokes their eye. Now, what's very interesting is that there is a hypothesis, a theory, that says that some trees have developed distinct defense mechanisms particular to the giraffe. In other words, acacias, for lack of a better word, have developed these massively long thorns, these long sharp thorns, specifically to deter giraffe from feeding on their leaves. Now I'm going to quickly ask Tsepiso to zoom out and show you how long these acacia thorns are. Right here next to me happens to be an acacia tree. And there you go. You can have a look at these wickedly sharp thorns. And acacias have really developed a stunning number of thorns, everywhere from hooked thorns to sharp, long thorns like this to paired sharp thorns to combinations of hooked and sharp thorns. And you can have a look at how small the acacia has made its leaves and how big it's made its thorns, and that's to look as unappetizing as possible from a distance. Obviously it hasn't worked. The giraffe are cleverer than that. And all right, wow, and 1.5 tons of giraffe have just quickly disappeared into the bush in front of us. We can go change direction a little bit so we can keep them in view. I hope wherever you are in the world that you've been having a good time between the drives today. Here it's been a fairly quiet day. I must be honest, I'm not quite sure what day it is anymore. I'm sure it's a Tuesday today. But it's been a fairly quiet day here. Nothing much going on. Hey, giraffe on their way to the road. I think let's see if we can go forward. I'm hoping that they actually go and end up at Djuma Cam. It looks like they're on their way there for a drink. Giraffe being so super efficient at getting as much nutrients as they can from the plants they eat, don't really need to drink every day. They'll drink when water is available, but they are fairly drought resistant. I'm hoping that doesn't stop these giraffe from going for a drink. They are when looking at them drink, obviously trying to get that big, or that head, not that big, that long neck with that head that's so far away from their bodies down to the water is no mean feat. Ah. And our two directors, Kirsty and Jerry, have just let me know that Jamie would really like to say hello too. So while we position ourselves to get a better view of these giraffe, off you go, and I'm sure we'll see you in a bit.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Sunset Safari. I think I might have found the run non-pregnant kudu on Djuma for once. I'm just trying to double check and see. Nope, that's a non-pregnant kudu. That's an achievement for the last few. Oh no, I think she's pregnant. I think she's just not as far along as the others. No, she's pregnant. Oh well, I thought I'd found the one non-pregnant kudu on Djuma, but it is in fact another pregnant kudu. It's amazing. I mean, we know that kudu have a peak breeding time, and that's clearly around about now. In my experience, it's always a little bit earlier than this, but obviously with this year's weather and last year's weather conditions, with the lack of rain, it's just been ever so slightly delayed. And that's not a conscious decision on the animal's part, but I do think that there's a biological factor. Because I've also noticed with a lot of the female impala, there's still far more late pregnancies than I think I've personally ever seen. I'm guessing that is because of the drought. And she's nice and relaxed, so I think we should be able to get another view of her. Clearer view. She's hidden in the trees. Hey, gorgeous. She's actually looking quite thin. Her ribs are starting to show. I don't know if that's because the pregnancy is pulling down, or if she's struggling to get the nutrition she needs. Come on, girl. That was not very considerate. That beautiful, graceful, long neck. And I'm not sure, and I'm really hoping that after the rain that we had a couple of days ago, that we might get a little bit more this evening. So that animals like this beautiful kudu can actually get a little bit more to sustain them. See how her ears every so often face backwards to where she's just been. And even though I think she's perfectly comfortable with our presence, there's that completely subconscious aspect to the way that she moves. She just twitches her ears back ever so slightly. And just quickly, in case new viewers were wondering, my name is Jamie and I have Bryan on camera with me this afternoon. Just to say hello to you all. The thumb made more than a cameo appearance there. That, by the way, ladies and gentlemen, was not in any way Bryan's fault. Sometimes this fluid head unlocks itself quite unexpectedly, and it's made for an amusing few moments over the last few days, but that, I think, tops them all. That was pretty impressive. And that's a beautiful kudu. And of course, to see to see them is always a wonder, because they are quite shy. But Jason, you were saying a kudu is like a bigger inyala, and yes, all part of the same family, and essentially evolved for a very similar niche in terms of the habitat that they occupy and the food that they eat. Now, they're all part of the Traphalagus, if you want to get technical, or the spiral-horned antelope family, if you don't want to get technical. And that includes the smallest member, which is the bushbuck. The kudu is probably the biggest member that you're most likely to see on a safari, on a live safari, that is. But you never know, you might get really lucky and spot the largest antelope both in this family and in the world, and that is the eland. A huge antelope the size of a buffalo and even taller, up to close to a ton in weight. And speaking of large antelope and other bovid species, Stef is still with his giraffe, so let's pop back over there.
Now, we just managed to see, we just got visual of one of the giraffes. It's not the same giraffe you were having a look at about a minute or two ago. This is one of her partners. It's a slightly younger giraffe. Now, you may be asking me, how long do giraffe live for? And the giraffe live for about 16 years, believe it or not. And if they can make it past their first year, they've got a good chance of making it until they're 16 years old. However, it's that first year which is the big problem. About half to 3/4 of all giraffes that are born in a year fall prey to lion and hyena and crocodile and human in areas where humans still live off the bush. And so they've responded by being they're one of the few mammals that double in size in their first year. So baby giraffe are born, they're born about 6 feet tall. And in their first year, they get to 12 feet. And then from there on, they top out for big males at about 5.5 meters, which is roughly, about 16 or 17 feet above the ground. And females get to about 3.5 meters, 3.5, 4 meters. Or 4.5 meters, actually, 4.5 meters for a female, 5.5 meters for a male. So 13 or 14 feet for a female and 16 or 17 feet for a male. Here comes another giraffe. There's just two of them in this journey. They don't form herds with one another. There is no herd. All giraffe form groups from time to time and will break apart from time to time as well. It's just beneficial for female giraffe to want to stick together, because having more eyes and ears scanning the bush for predators mean that their babies definitely have a better chance of spotting or not being spotted by and caught by a lion. You can have a look at the beautiful color that she is. She's got this real deep, dark, chocolatey brown at the saddle on her back, and then she goes into an almost pure white on her belly and flanks. Full-grown giraffe, fully mature. Now, some giraffe are blonde and some giraffe are brunette. And they get a bit darker as they get older, but generally speaking, if a giraffe is born light, it'll get a little bit darker, but it won't turn very dark. And if a giraffe is born brunette, it'll get darker. I've seen almost black giraffe. She's a more blonde giraffe. And that bird that you're seeing, a red-billed oxpecker, meticulously combing the hair for any parasites, keeping the giraffe's fur nice and clean, and at the same time providing itself with a meal. A bit of an abstract fact is that the type of symbiosis that the red-billed oxpecker has with the giraffe is, it almost seems like that it's a bit confused, I think is the word that I'm looking for. The reason for that is that it would seem that both the bird and the giraffe benefit from the relationship, and that is precisely what's happening right now. But the red-billed oxpecker also eats a lot of blood. And when, and should, a giraffe have a scratch on her, the oxpeckers have been known to keep that scratch and that cut open for a lot longer than what is necessary, keeping the wound open. Some scientists say it's beneficial to the giraffe to have the wound kept open. All the dead skin and necrotic flesh gets eaten off and it promotes blood flow. Others say that it's a bit unnecessary and would therefore move into parasitism. So of the two symbiotic relationships that is being exhibited, at the moment we are seeing commensalism, or mutualism, I think, it's actually the word, where both parties benefit. But it can also be parasitism, where one party benefits and the other one is harmed in the process. Right now, though, I think that giraffe is really enjoying being combed. They do look like they're having fun. These birds actually line the nests. They nest in holes in trees, and they actually line their nests with fur gathered from animals. You can see how easy it would be for them to get that fur. Now, because giraffes' necks are so long, babies are actually born while the females are standing. Most other mammals would lie down, either lie down on their sides or lie down with their heads up. Giraffe mothers don't do that. And the reason for that is that it's very difficult for them to reach the birth canal. And so babies actually fall out, head and feet first, fall onto the ground from all that distance away. That knocks out the fluid and the mucus from the lungs and causes the baby to have its first breath. And will also snap the umbilical cord, which is necessary for the whole birthing process to reach its terminal point. I mean, I must say, that birth canal that you're having a look at there underneath the tail is taller than I am, and I stand 6 feet, just over 6 feet tall. I've got to know, coming into this world with a thump. Long tail, beautifully long hair at the end there, used as a bit of a flower whisk. She will whisk her flanks, as you see there, whipping that long fur up her flanks, flicking at the flies. She's in very good condition. Giraffe, you can always tell if they're in bad condition. If you look under the tail, between the legs on the bum cheeks or the thighs, giraffe in bad condition carry massive tick loads. Now, although there are lots of ticks there, every one of those little black speckles underneath her tail is a tick. It is about the number that I'd expect. A giraffe carrying a massive tick load actually carries them like grapes. They hang there, you can actually not see the fur in those areas. They look sick. Enormous thigh muscles. Giraffe have the hardest kick of any of the mammals in Africa. Can you imagine the amount of leverage that they can put onto those flying hooves using muscles that big? Could easily kill a lion. And they will kick with their back legs, they will stomp with their feet, they kick with their front legs as well, they kick out forward. Mothers put up quite a fight to try and save their babies. And Genevieve in New York has asked if rain deters ticks temporarily. Genevieve, not that I've seen. I've never had the pleasure of having ticks climb onto me in a rainstorm. However, I have been very infrequently out in the bush in a rainstorm. I wouldn't be able to tell you from personal experience. And I haven't seen rain wash ticks off of any animal. I haven't seen them be any less full of ticks after rain. So I can only imagine that the answer to that question would be no, as I'm sitting here right now, Genevieve, unless you have some experience to change my mind. And of course, on that note, for those of you who have just joined the show for the first time or are watching for the first couple of times, you are welcome to send comments, just random comments about the show and about what we're watching, or questions through to us. We'll try and get through as many as we can. You can use the Twitter handle hashtag SafariLIVE, or you can email us using questions@wildearth.tv. And look at this, we've got now this giraffe has quartered back, coming right past us. And Monique, all the way from freezing London, has asked, since giraffe babies come out so specialized, they come out without the mother landing down and plop out onto the ground, do some giraffe babies get hurt? Now, Monique, I have to say that I've never seen an injured giraffe baby from a birth. Giraffe have a lot of babies. They don't have a lot of babies at one time, but you find that healthy populations of giraffe grow relatively quickly. They, as far as I know, have quite elastic bones, and the fall doesn't do too much. I'm sure a bruise or two would appear. Nothing can fall from that height without much of an injury, but I've never seen it be detrimental to the baby giraffe. Not really. Now we're going to try and go down the road a little bit. We've got one giraffe on our right hand side and we've got two giraffe on our left, and I want to see if we can see them before they go into the thick bush here. That's not going to happen too easy. My immobilizer has activated, which means we have to quickly cross to Jamie at some point before I change where my car is. We're gonna have this giraffe cross the road. I think let's watch her cross the road if she's gonna do that. No, she's not gonna cross, so I think it'll be safe for us to quickly go through to Jamie, and we'll start the car and reposition. We'll be with you very shortly.
Well, Stef's stuck at the giraffe crossing. We've made our way onto Arathusa to explore the various options here. Just a quick update from this morning for those of you who may have missed it. This morning we tracked a leopard that one of the viewers, I think it was Deb, had heard on the dam camera at about 1 o'clock in the morning. And I'm fairly certain, of course, it's always supposition, fairly certain that it was a Mbula that we were tracking. He came down sort of the middle of Djuma from Buffelshoek and then crossed all the way east. We tracked him all the way east into Torchwood. And popped his way over that boundary and into there. And I suspect it's Mbula just in terms of territorial likelihood. We know that that area is more Mbula's territory than Tingana's, but you never know, because Tingana has been seen before coming out of Torchwood. Ah, how lovely. Somebody here to chat to. How's it, Troy? How are you? Hi, guys.
Got the kid.
You too?
Yeah, that's on this side.
Okay, awesome.
So
Thanks.
Tingana this morning in the east.
In the east? Okay.
Far away.
Maybe it was him I was tracking this morning through Djuma.
So he's like...
His tracks crossed Djuma and popped out on Cheetah Cut Line and into Torchwood.
Yes.
It was him. Okay, perfect. Thanks. All right, awesome. Have a good afternoon.
Bye.
Cheers, guys. I stand corrected. It was Tingana we were tracking, apparently, or most likely. Roy's just told me that they found Tingana far in the east. That's interesting. So that's a couple of times now that he's really pushed into Mbula's territory. Very interesting indeed, and I wonder whether that's not a result of the Anderson male pushing more onto Tingana's western boundary. That's interesting. Goes to show as well that you should never assume too much about the identity of a leopard if you're just looking at his footprints. There's one of two, really, most likely, just by the size of the tracks. Then the other update that I have from this morning is just to let you know, interestingly, that I went to go and visit the Gallagher shortcut den with Bryan this morning, and the first thing that hit us was an overwhelming smell of decay. And I did a bit of a walk around just to make sure that it wasn't a piece of carcass that hyenas had brought through to the den. And I stopped and had a sniff right at the entrance to one of the holes, and it was clearly coming from there. Now remember that female that James said he heard calling at the entrance to the den, and we had her as well at the Gallagher shortcut den calling, and we never saw the cubs. I strongly suspect, that's fact, okay, we know that female was calling, and we found this very smelly den site at Gallagher shortcut den, which also explains why the cubs were moved when they were. My guess, and I would say 90% certain, you never know, I could well be wrong. My guess is that female lost her cubs somehow. I'm not going to go so far as to guess how. There's a couple of different options that we'll never know. I tried looking down into the den to just confirm it, but I was not going to go sticking any body parts or anything like that down there to try and figure it out. So a very sad situation. Whether or not it's connected to the skirmish that we had 2 days ago, we'll never know. I suspect it might be, though. I'm not sure why I do, though. That's complete supposition on my part. But those are just the two major updates that we had from this morning. I'm making my way along Arethusa. I'm going to check out the drainage lines. The guys are saying that there's no updates from here, so I'm just going to do a quick loop through the drainage lines and then make my way back towards Djuma. Because you never know what's around the next corner. You just have to not stop believing. Let's go and see what we can find. And exciting news as well, can you believe it? But Mr. Scott Dyson is back tomorrow afternoon as well. I'm sure you're all very excited to see both him and Miss Nikki Austin returning to Djuma. Okay, in Texas, after our thumb sighting that turned into an unexpectedly long and more exposed thumb sighting than either Bryan or myself expected, but was highly entertaining. Kay in Texas would like to know if the thumb is a righty or a lefty.
Thumb is a lefty. I'm left-handed by trade.
Hey, there you go. Bryan is a lefty, therefore the thumb is lefty. And the thumb has certainly become a character all of its own. Bryan's supreme artistic skills coming through. The wonderful thing, my favorite thing about the thumb is that you just never know when it's gonna pop up and say hello. It means you gotta keep watching, you gotta keep paying attention, or you might miss it. Unless, of course, the fluid head collapses, in which case you could have a much more protracted sighting than you ever expected to have. Okie dokie. What is down this way? It's raining over the mountains, I will say that. Just as I'm driving along, I can see it. Hopefully, that bodes well for us as well. Be nice. Those clouds look a little bit heavier than usual. Question from Billy as we passing the luxurious Arathusa Lodge. Billy actually would like to know where there's places where humans still live off the bush, so in the bush itself, and rely on the resources that it provides, and where and what sort of numbers. Now within South Africa, there's no place where that I can think of, short of maybe some of the last few remaining Khoisan people. And by last few remaining Khoisan people, I mean, I read an article recently that one of the Khoisan languages, there's only 4 people left who actually are fluent in it, in terms of it being their native language. So a culture that has really, really sadly started to die out. And even then, I would say that they no longer live in the completely natural way that they used to. So within South Africa itself, there's very few places where people live off the land entirely. You know, they still have access to shopping centers, and I'm just making a decision quickly about my route. I think we're going to go this way. My favorite drainage lines in Arathusa. I can't actually think of a specific people that would live entirely off the land. That being said, the land is still absolutely of vital importance to a number of different South African cultures, and especially in rural, for example, rural KwaZulu-Natal, where you're talking a good couple of 100,000 people, millions of people actually, that live in rural settlements both there and within the Limpopo and Mpumalanga area where we are at the moment. Where yes, people will still, although they have access to shopping centers, there will still be an aspect of relying on the land, and there's still traditional cures for certain ailments and things like that. And they will still hunt for bushmeat and utilize the resources that the land provides to them. But nowhere at this point has got to the point where people live truly outside of access to civilization. And even we will rely on aspects of this environment if we need to. I've tested medicinal cures of plants before and found them to be really successful. The best one is the red spike thorns, which I'll grab as soon as I go past one. Actually, here's a good example. Is that a spike thorn? Yeah, that's a young spike thorn. Let me just grab some leaves and I'll show you what I mean. Bryan, are you in or not?
I'm in.
You're in? Okay. Something we do on the odd occasion is stop to eat, and I actually saw a buffalo here, so I'm going to just look around the corner. Yep. Find some nice leaves. So, spike thorn leaves are exceptionally astringent. Here you go, B-Dog. You can experiment with that. So if you eat these...
Very tasty.
Oh. Yuck, that was a terrible one. Essentially what it does... Water! Where's my water gone? Essentially what that leaf does... Hold on, I need a sip of water first. I can't talk now. Shall I be really melodramatic about this? And when I say I need some water, pull out my water container. Ooh, Bryan and I are both going to have a quick sip of water. So, the reason I'm pulling funny faces is because that essentially, within a couple of bites or chews of that leaf, essentially dries up all of your saliva. You have none left in your mouth. It's a very strange feeling. It becomes a sort of a... You feel like you're never going to have spit in your mouth ever again. And it's actually a very useful plant because that effect, if you swallow those leaves, I spat mine out just because I don't need it at the moment. But if you swallow those leaves, and the prescribed dose, I have been told, is still gross, is about 3 of them. How do you feel, Bryan? Are you recovering now?
It's like severe cotton mouth.
That's exactly what it's like. It is like it's like cotton mouth. Like you've stuffed cotton wool in your mouth and it's absorbed every aspect of your moisture within it. So if you eat 3 of those, I wonder if the dosage differs for different people in terms of size. Never thought about that aspect before. But if you swallow 3 of those, it acts like Imodium. So if you find yourself with diarrhea in the bush, and of course that can actually be fatal, if you're stranded outside... Sorry, I'm trying to see where the birds are that are making a racket. If you're stranded and lost in the bush and you find yourself with some kind of stomach bug that's giving you diarrhea, 3 of those spike thorn leaves are very, very effective at halting that particular process. Baby elephants eat them as well. So when baby elephants their teeth start to grow, just like toddlers, it makes them niggly and sore and uncomfortable. And so they go and they find themselves some spike thorn leaves. I would love to know whether babies know that instinctively or whether the adults take them specifically to go and eat those leaves. Because it acts like a painkiller. It takes away the itch and the niggle. And I certainly I'm not really feeling my tongue as well as I was before that. Hey, there's the parrots that I was trying to find you. I could hear them making a screeching sound. I'm trying to get them. Oh no, there's a green pigeon. Sorry, it's a green pigeon. Arethusa seems to be the land of the green pigeon. I'm not going to go much closer because I think he's going to fly away. Luckily, Bryan's managed to get us a view. Definitely high up on the list of the most beautiful pigeons that we get out here. The African green pigeon. I also know it as the Tarzan bird because it makes a call like Tarzan. Tarzan's cliche, the sound he makes as he swings through the trees, which I'm not going to do. I mean, I'm quite happy to embarrass myself and sacrifice the self upon the altar of my dignity to an extent. But my attempt at imitating green pigeons is embarrassing, to say the least. Beautiful birds. Entirely arboreal, so tree-based, rather than the little doves that wander around on the ground and pick up seeds. And a diet based primarily on fruit. And just as an interesting aside, regular viewers know that we've been speaking a lot about the giraffes targeting and eating buffalo thorns recently, and elephants. And I've just realized why. The plants are fruiting. I'm looking for an example now, but of course I picked the one patch in both Djuma and Arethusa that doesn't have a buffalo thorn, but they're fruiting at the moment. That's why the elephants and the giraffes are targeting them. Give himself a little gentle ruffle there. What is that yellow patch there? What is that? Sorry, hold on everyone. I'm going to try and get my binoculars out. Their legs are orange, and I can't quite make out what that yellow thing is, unless it's the feathers that are particularly yellow on this individual, but I've never seen that before. Interesting. I don't know what that... I wonder if that bird's not tagged. Unlikely. I haven't heard of green pigeon tagging. I guess you never know. There's no reason why I should know of every research project. Beautiful little birds, and I'm happy to see one. Add to your bird list for new viewers. You can start trying to catch up with some of our more regular viewers who are on easily over 100 in certain cases. Meantime, looking at a bird in a tree, Stef has found a mammal that likes to live in the tree. Let's pop over there.
And here's quite a rare sight to see. It's a tree squirrel that's on the ground. And this little tree squirrel is taking a big risk being on the ground. Obviously, they are safest on branches and in the trees. But I think with the food being as scarce as what it is at the moment, they're forced to come down off of the trees to come and have a look for some food and morsels wherever they can find it. Now, just recently, my son has adopted a tree squirrel as a pet, and this animal, this rogue, has the run of my house. So I'm learning about the behavior and habits of tree squirrels in the Winterboer household. And I must be honest with you, they're actually quite comical. I was against it in the beginning because these things run riot in your house. But I am enjoying this little tree squirrel immensely. This obviously is not my pet, or we are not this tree squirrel's pet, as is in the case at my house. And you can see how alert they are, full of energy, daytime active, his sharp little claws, very dexterous feet, uses them to dig and pry open, use their mouth to taste everything. They're little biters. And things that will love to snack on this tree squirrel, any number of birds of prey, snakes, and even some large lizards. The white-throated monitor will make a meal of this squirrel if it could catch it on the ground without any safe tree nearby. And will investigate minutely every little nook and cranny and hole and excavation and chamber that it can find. There we go. Bounds away, as you can see, very quickly out of frame, boom, into a tree. And that's where it's most at home, is in the branches of a tree. Now, Wayne in Philadelphia has asked us, is this squirrel any different from the grey squirrel that is found where he lives? Wayne, probably not, apart from the fact that it's a different species, of course, and maybe your grey squirrel is a bit bigger or smaller, different color, I'm not too sure. But essentially, all the squirrels here will exhibit very similar behaviors to your squirrels in North America, barring the fact that it doesn't hibernate. These squirrels will absolutely larder food as well as your squirrels do. And they do that just on the off chance that there's going to be a food shortage. The only difference is that these squirrels won't have to hibernate. It doesn't get that cold here. Have a look at him just leaning over the branch over there. surveying his domain. My squirrel absolutely doesn't believe he's a squirrel. He believes that he's a 10-foot tall Rottweiler. And I have no doubt that this squirrel thinks exactly the same of himself. Very alert creatures, and quite often we find leopard because these squirrel are giving their chittering alarm call at the leopard. Leopard will prey on squirrel. I've seen them prey on squirrel quite a few times. Especially young leopard make the most of every hunting opportunity, and squirrel are high up on their list of prey animals to hunt. And because of that, squirrels definitely have an ingrained fear of leopard. They'll also have a fear of caracal and serval. They will definitely shout at falcons and hawks and eagles. And of course, snakes. Look at that face. Very human-like ears. Keep on reminding myself how very similar to my ears this squirrel that I have is. Obviously large protuberances from the side of my head, which not a scrap of hair covers or hides in any way. Now this squirrel is staring intently at some zebra. I'm just going to pan across slightly. We finished having a look at him. And there are some zebra just across from Treehouse Dam. Enjoying the grass next to the water. There's a youngster on the far left-hand side of the screen, a foal. And that foal, it's quite interesting. I want to see if he's eating grass or he's licking the sand. He's busy giving himself a scratch, and he's nibbling on that coarse grass there. Not really needing to at the moment. He's just doing that because, very similar to the wildebeest, they are precocial. In other words, they copy mommy, or amongst other things, they copy mom and dad intently. And he's obviously, this little young foal is watching the adults crop at the grass, and so now he must crop at the grass. That is exactly what he's busy doing there, is copying. And that's it's a defining trait of a precocial baby. Now have a look at this giraffe, giraffe, listen to what I'm saying. This zebra right in the middle. This morning we were talking about sexing giraffe using the vertical stripe under the tail. And this one here, for those of you who weren't watching this morning, under the tail, if the stripe is a nice thick stripe like that one is, at least 3 fingers wide, then it's a female. If it's a pin stripe, less than a finger wide, then it's a male. So that's a female with they're all got fairly big bellies at the moment, and they are beautifully clean. Especially the zebra on the far left behind the foal. Just hold on there, Tep. Sorry, I just want to... The Birchall zebra, or the plain zebra as you're seeing, is the only zebra to exhibit the shadow stripe. Now those zebra on the left-hand side have the shadow stripe, so there's a thin, almost smudged stripe between the bold black and white stripes. The zebra on the left has no shadow stripe. There's just 1 or 2 on the rump. For the rest of it, the zebra on the left has a very plainly striped coat. Very striking for me, the coats without the shadow stripe. I enjoy them a lot more. Other people enjoy having the shadow stripe because it looks so different from other zebra that they've seen. The Hartman zebra and the Cape Mountain zebra all have just plain black and white stripes. The shadow stripe marks the Birchall zebra out as unique, or the plain zebra out as unique. Sorry, Tibbs, you're welcome to do what you were going to do there. I hijacked your shot. And there you go. Young foal, and probably his mom. From this distance, quite difficult to tell. It's definitely a female. The adult I'm talking about now. The youngster, very difficult to sex at this age. Looks like she's lactating. I can see her mammary glands just there tucked in underneath her back legs on her tummy. And they look fairly swollen. Now, there are only not tens of thousands of zebra here in the Sabi Sands. It's just not an area that's conducive to large herd sizes. Definitely in some areas in Africa, 5,000 or 6,000 miles away from here, you get the Masai Mara and the Serengeti, which have hundreds of thousands of zebra all conglomerating with another. And believe it or not, but zebra can recognize one another's stripes. A mommy zebra will recognize her baby zebra stripes above all other babies, and vice versa. And if one of them had to suffer an accident, like being eaten by a lion or something like that, they are not fostered by others. So mommy zebra only look after their babies and no others. And have a look at that. That is one of the theories around why the zebra have stripes. See how the baby blends into the mother's coat? Not so much now, but definitely when the youngster was standing in front of the mom. A bit of a breeze that's just kicked up here. Zebra can eat a very wide range of grass species. Oh, look at that. Give me a bit of a play. You can see there what I was meaning about the zebra, the baby's profile being broken up against the mother. One of the theories as to zebra having stripes is exactly that. They help one another bedazzle a lion or a predator, a potential predator, making it very difficult for a predator to single out any one specific target, thereby enabling the zebra to get up to speed and get away from predators. They can run very, very quickly and quickly outrace most predatory cats. Me personally, I'm more for the theory of it just looks pretty and the females have chosen stripy horses over plain horses because it's prettier. Pamela has asked, how would a baby zebra and a baby elephant get along? Would they play with one another? Pamela, you know what? I'm going to actually answer that question with a yes. Both zebra foals and elephant foals, elephant calves, are incredibly playful with one another of their own species. And they're also inquisitive around other species. Zebra foals grow up with any number of different mammals, from wildebeest to impala to kudu, in close proximity to them, and don't seem to be perturbed or put off by them whatsoever. And elephant calves are absolutely known to investigate almost anything, very inquisitive, very playful. So I'll probably go out on a limb here and say yes, not under all circumstances, of course, and it would be rare to see them interacting like that. But I definitely think it is possible. Now, zebra are very good at eating short grass, and that's what they're nibbling on at the moment. Obviously, being this close to Treehouse Dam, the vegetation around Treehouse has been quite heavily browsed and grazed. But that doesn't seem to be putting off the zebra. They have the lips and the teeth capable of cropping grass almost down to the root level, very similar to hippopotamus and warthog, in actual fact. Animals they share some close relationship to. Monique is in London. And good afternoon, Monique. Has asked another question that incites a little bit of discussion. Would the herd help to defend the foal, or would the only defense mechanism be to run away? Now, Monique, the primary defense mechanism of a zebra would be to run away, when and where possible. Should the baby be caught or should an adult be caught, I have absolutely seen the mother of those foals come in to trample and stamp and kick and bite at predators, even lion. Not as often, but even lion. And I've also seen the herd stallion come and to the defense of not only his own foal, but also of females. Come running in at particular jackal, cheetah, sometimes wild dog, leopard, and sometimes lion. And then why I said it was quite an interesting point, and why the discussion is an interesting discussion, is because I've also seen male zebra kick to death foals. And what generally is the cause for this is that a mother is killed overnight by lion or by whatever, and in the morning, because there is no fostering of babies, the baby starts to get hungry, or the baby starts to call for the mother, which elicits unnecessary or unwarranted attention onto the herd. And it's quite bizarre. We've actually seen it on WildEarth before, but it's quite bizarre that the herd stallion will come and kick to death a baby who's drawing unwarranted attention. So in one way, yes, the herd is protective of one another. In another way, or another sense, they are quite intolerant of certain behaviors, as I've used as an example. So good question there, Monique. I probably confused you a lot more there than what I meant to. Their coats are very short. Their hair is quite dense. And that short coat and dense fur allows for that bold stripy pattern to occur. And because it's warm here almost year-round, zebra, and wherever zebra occur, zebra have this unique stripy pattern, which you got to admit is one of the most bizarre patterns on any of the animals out here. I mean, the only animals that rival zebra in terms of stripy patterns are birds, I think, birds and insects, for having bizarre patterns. And in birds and in insects, it's all reproductive selection that determines the stripes and the patches and whatnot. Hence me believing that I don't think there's any Neon Tiger's asked an interesting question. Have any other color zebra ever been spotted? For instance, an albino zebra? And I'm just going to add on to that, Neon Tiger. I'm going to add on to the fact that you may see a melanistic or a black zebra as well. In mammals, albinism, leucism, and melanism is definitely found. And I'm sure you will find white zebra and black zebra and a whole host of colors in between. I've never personally seen one, but I'm sure that they do occur. If you can find a photo of one that isn't an obvious hoax, you're welcome to post it to us on our social media platforms. They tend to get quite lively with things like this and discussions like this, and see if anyone else can find it. Hey, zebra have now obviously come down for a drink here at Treehouse Pan. Even though it hasn't rained again, unfortunately. Fortunately, it has been overcast for the last 3 days or so. And the sun hasn't been able to beat down, which is let the water stay and seep into the mud here around Treehouse. I just saw there was a terrapin that was in the water there. He's now swum off. But what amazes me is that there wasn't a drop of water here a week ago. Now there is, and all of a sudden we're finding terrapins. And literally the closest water to here a week ago was about 2 kilometers from here at Djuma Cam. That terrapin was either hiding in the mud here somewhere or walked 2 kilometers from Djuma Cam just to come back to Treehouse. There are so many things that we don't know about the bush. It's just fascinating. And Dr. Debbie, having a look at the pan here, obviously, or having a look at the giraffe that we were looking at with all the ticks and the parasites, has asked, are leeches a problem for animals that spend a lot of time in the water? Yes, I would have to say. Where have I encountered leeches before? In South Africa, I've encountered leeches in a few dams and a few rivers in South Africa. I haven't encountered any leeches in the Okavango Delta or here in the Sabi Sands, for that matter of fact. I've swum in most rivers and dams around here. So I can't really say from personal experience, Dr. Debbie, I haven't seen leeches hanging on animals. However, you do find terrapins picking at things on buffalo that lie in water. So that's actually a good question. I don't actually know the answer to that question, Dr. Debbie. I'm sure leeches are a problem for any animal that inhabits a moist area. The area where we're in at the moment is very dry and susceptible to droughts, and I don't think because of that leeches are very prevalent out here. I think the closer you get to Central Africa, leeches become more of a problem, and the more swampy areas, Okavango Delta, the Busanga Plains, I can't remember what those other swamps are in eastern Zambia, and then you start going into tropical Africa where leeches are a huge problem. Brent Leo Smith will be able to tell you about his Gabon experience, and I'm sure he can horrify you with enough leech stories to make you never want to go there. But so yes, leeches are a problem for any mammal or any blood-carrying animal in areas where they are found. I can only imagine that would be the same here. However, there's not a lot of leeches here because it is an area susceptible to drought. So I hope that answered your question. All right, these zebra are moving off. I think it is a good indication that we can do the same. My immobilizer is immobilizing me at the moment, so we're going to have to go over to Jamie at some point so that Sips and I can start the car and take you to some other spectacle. In the meantime, have a look at the clouds that are busy building up over here. Our rain generally doesn't come from this area. Our rain comes from this area off to the east, and as you can see, there are clouds almost everywhere around us, but the thicker bank of cloud is definitely off to our west. And unfortunately, we get only rain really here from the east and the south. That's where we get our most rain from, and then we get our heaviest storms from the north. Not very many storms from the west. It's not to say that we won't get storms, but let's please put your hands together that this weather system is coming in from the east and is bunching up against the Drakensberg Mountains, and will eventually shed some load on us. Jamie is ready to give you an update and to tell you a little bit about us, which will allow us to start the car and move off on something else. And I'm sure we'll catch up with you in a minute or 2 or 10 or 15 or whenever we see you again.
Well guys, I'm going to leave you to watch this dung beetle for one moment because someone's trying to contact me on the Game Drive channel. Standing by. Okay, copy. But you haven't got to see if she's crossed Buffelshoek boundary yet. Okay, copy, perfect, thanks. I'm just at Royatela Main Access now at the Link Road. I'll come and join you. be careful, little buddy. I love watching the way that they roll their dung balls along. Or going to one of the busiest roads within the Sabi Sands. He's moving straight towards the Triple M boundary, and he's making me very nervous as he does it. So I've raced up here because we've just had a report that a female leopard, and I strongly suspect that it's Karula, and Taxon agrees with me, judging by the tracks, that she crossed from Simbambili, One-Eyed Pan, across to Vuyatela. Taxon's just got her tracks now, and he's on his way to follow up on where she's gone. So she's heading towards Buffelshoek boundary. Hopefully, fingers crossed, she doesn't cross, and I'm actually going to go now. I'm going to see if she, just in case she's on the move still, because it is cool, she might be on her way. I'm just going to turn this radio down. Oh, there's another dung beetle. Drive around it. Sorry, I would have loved to have sat and watched that little dung beetle at work, but I want to follow up here and figure out exactly where it is that Karula went from. In fact, I'm going to keep this turned up. So they picked her tracks up on a very large elephant path, which I think is here. Taxon is driving along to the Buffelshoek boundary. I'm going to take Sandy Patch, I think, just in case she decides to do one of her interesting Karula moves, which is to go the opposite direction to the way you expect her to go in. Between the two of us, I'm sure we should be able to pick up on her. Apparently, Stef has really kindly offered to help. Let's just see how we go in terms of if Taxon picks up the tracks crossing Buffelshoek boundary. If not, then I think it'd be a great idea, since we haven't seen Karula in such a long time, or what feels like a very long time. Oh, sorry. Go ahead. So they've got her. I just need to figure out where exactly there is. Here we go. Here we go. Yay! It's so exciting. We haven't seen Karula in such a long time. Vehicle moving. Thank you, Tex. Can I join you? Awesome stuff. You've seen her yet, Bryan? No, okay. Maybe you've seen her. Oh, there she is. And she's up. Yay! How awesome is this? So cool. What a treat. Hello, Karula. Looking nice and full-bellied. I'm fairly certain it's Karula. Honestly, I haven't seen her face properly just yet. Oh, walking straight behind the other vehicle. Yeah, she pops out there. Awesome stuff. Hey, Bryan. Bryan and I said we had a good feeling about this afternoon sunset safari. Okay, now it becomes a bit tricky. This is a very thick block, so you'll have to bear with us as we negotiate this block. Hello, Karula. Sorry, girl. I'll stop here. She's scent marking. And it's something that we see quite regularly with the big cats after a rainy day. They will scent mark, come back and replace all of their scent markings that they had that have been washed away. She's looking very full. That is a nice big belly that she's got there. Just going to move out of Taxon's way, since he did very kindly find a leopard for us. Is she gonna go up this termite mound? She's gonna go that way. Nope, she's gonna go the other way. Nope, she's gonna go straight over it. Hello, gorgeous. And there's her tip of that white tail working furiously as it always does. I'm not sure if it's my imagination or the time I've spent with her, but she seems to have one of the most active tail tips that I've ever met or encountered in a leopard. It's always moving. Having a sniff. And a foot scrape. Definitely scent marking. And of course, there's always the possibility that her daughter Shadow has been through here. We're right on the boundary between those two leopards' territories. Watch out, Bryan, I don't want to confuse you with a buffalo thorn. We are coming to a really densely vegetated area. It's the drainage line around Sandy Patch. Bear with us a moment as we bottleneck through the bushes. Trying to find us a more open way through, and I don't think I can. So have to be very careful of the virtual reality rig here. It should be okay if I do it like this. Okay there, B-Dog. Lost sight of her. I'm just waiting for Taxon to move through. Taxon's still got her. I just had to wait for him to move over a particular obstacle so that we can go as well. That we've got the Queen of Djuma walking through, and Alice in Ohio, who wanted to know how Karula became the Queen of Djuma. And whoop, I'm busy following Taxon, and I think he's choosing a different no, he's going that way. Alice, Karula is one of the most extraordinary leopards. She has the largest area in the Sabi Sands, and the reason she's Queen of Djuma is because Djuma is absolutely central to the core part of her territory. She's also been one of the most successful leopard mothers that I personally have ever heard of. She's raised so many successful litters of cubs. She's only 11, coming up to 12 in the next few months. And she was known from the days, her mother was actually known to some of our more regular viewers. Her name was the Safari female leopard. She was missing an eye, and her story was followed even at that point. I think Taxi might have lost visual of her. Sorry guys, I just need to have a quick chat with some of the guides, see if they've seen her. So I think she might have pulled a Karula on us. How's it, Aubrey? Good, thanks. Did you see her, or is she still coming through?
No, still coming.
Awesome. What we're going to do now, I think, is just wait for a moment and see where she pops out. There we go, they've got her. Copy, thanks. There she is. Does that look like Shadow to you? It's really difficult to see. She's hidden. Come on, girl, look at me. Look at me. Nope, it's not Karula. Sorry, everybody, that is definitely not Karula. That's Shadow. Shadow. It took me a moment as we were driving through the bush, but that face is not familiar to me. Guys, I've just got to reposition so that Aubrey can make his way in here as well. Might be a bit tricky. That's definitely Shadow. Awesome to see her. I haven't seen her even longer than it's been since I saw Karula, so I'm equally excited. So for new viewers, Shadow is Karula's daughter. So Shadow is her 9-year-old daughter. She would have been part of her first litter. And in comparison to what I was saying about Karula, I said that Karula was the Queen of Djuma, one of the most successful leopard mothers that I've certainly ever encountered. But unfortunately, Shadow has had far less success in that respect. And at 9, she's only managed to raise one litter that we know of to over a year old. So I don't know what the reason for that is. I personally don't think it's got anything to do with her mothering skills. I think it's more to do with she's just been incredibly unlucky. Hold on one moment. I want to just chat to Orbs. Orbs, if you want to come you shop. Thank you. And we will just all take turns, and usually you'll find that we'll be able to reposition and get a better view in a few moments. But yes, Shadow, I think, has just been exceptionally unfortunate. But as I said, this is the boundary between mother and daughter's territory in this particular case. Look at that belly. Looking very big. Wandering through. I'm going to let Aubrey go ahead of us here because his guests haven't had a good chance to view her. And while I do, as we watched her walk away, that little white tail flicking, I've said that Karula has a very active tail. Apparently so does Shadow, because that was Shadow we were watching. And Monique, you were wondering, wondered if we could explain a little bit more about those tail flicks. As you said that, how does she stop the birds from alarm calling? And I know exactly what you mean, because those white tails are pretty much the most obvious. Ooh. That's embarrassing. Just pretend I didn't stall. The white tail is one of the most obvious things. It's the first thing you see on a leopard. Where's she gone? Where's she gonna pop out? Sorry, Monique. I promise I'm gonna get back to your question. I'm just concentrating for a second. This is where it gets a little bit tricky. Awesome to see Shadow. See Shadow again. Guys, what I'm going to do for now, if you don't mind, is just send you over to Steph. We've got a lovely bird to show you, but I promise we'll be back as soon as we get a good view of Shadow again. Just gives me some time to concentrate.
We just thought we'd steal you away from Shadow for a couple of seconds while we have this fantastic view of a woodland kingfisher sitting out in the open and quite still on a branch here. There we go. And I'm so glad that we got to show that to you, because usually they don't stick around for long whatsoever. So that was a woodland kingfisher, and using the exposed branch to hunt on for a little bit, and I'm very, very happy that we got to show that to you. As far as I know, you're sitting with Shadow, and she is on the move, and it's giving Jamie some time to reposition her car. Now, the other day, Brent and I were on a walk, and we found, or what Brent believes to be, a half-collared kingfisher nest. And I'm going to be taking the river route now back to Gowrie Main, and I want to go see if we can see this half-collared kingfisher. If you think that the wood kingfisher has some electric blue on it, the half-collared kingfisher has equally as much. Alright, let's carry on going. Myself and Jamie left camp this afternoon thinking that we needed to find a leopard, and it just felt right for a leopard this afternoon. There was just that energy that you get on a leopard afternoon. Even after 17 years, I have yet to define what gives me that leopard feeling, or Jamie for that matter of fact, but we had it. Shadow. We've been looking forward to seeing a leopard for quite a number of days. Now, kingfishers, especially half-collared kingfishers and the grey-hooded kingfisher, nest in the banks of rivers like this. Not in this bank, one next to us here, and I'm going to be sneaking up on this bank. It is here that we were standing. I never saw the bird myself, but Brent shouted out, "Hey, look, there's this kingfisher." He's been back once or twice, and he's actually seen the bird on a number of occasions. I just thought that it's high time that I saw it. The signal that it now, in this bank in front of us, right here, is I'm just going to be approaching it very slowly. I'm scanning every bush and branch that I can. hear a rattling testicular and see a female redback shrike. Now the nest in question that we're talking about is one of these holes, one of these excavations, one of these few I'm going to be showing you right now. It's one of these two here. One of these two excavations is that kingfisher. Seems to have moved on, or is inside the hole, or is otherwise occupied, because I can't see a single thing, which is not uncommon. Right, our signal's getting a bit sketchy, and I think before we lose you completely, we're going to send you through to...
Well, guys, for the moment, we have relocated Shadow, and she is lying down. If you look really carefully, you can see the patterned spots and a little bit of her head. There you go. She turned nicely for us. So we just have to be patient for now with this visual. We will be able to get a little bit of a nicer one a bit later. But for now, this is where we will be. And I was in the middle of answering Monique's question about the white tip tail. So the theory is that that white tip is a way for cubs to follow their parents and to basically essentially highlight a crucial part of the animal's visual communication to each other, the way that they talk to each other, essentially. Now, my theory, Monique, in terms of that white tail, is that it's an evolutionary blip in its own way. It's something that doesn't actually advantage the animal, and in fact probably serves to give it away at times. And a lot of the times it will be what the birds spot. Now, personally, I've got no hard evidence to back this up, just personal observation from watching leopards as well as watching domestic cats as well. I have watched them. Oh, she's up. I will finish that story in a moment. And she's pushing through. She's going to come around the left side of the car. There she goes. Hello, Shadow. You're looking good, girl, since I last saw you. Look at her coming right up close to us. Hello, big girl. Giving Bryan a cursory glance as she walks straight past him. Oh, I love these leopards around here. Oops, stepped on a thorn. Did a bit of a shake there. So cool. So comfortable with the presence of vehicles. Okay, let's try and stay with her. Let's see where she decides to go. Right, where was I? Every time I try and answer poor Monique's question, I get distracted by something else happening. So, Monique, I don't think leopards, personally, I don't think they have that much conscious control. Watch your head, what you do? Get thorn. She's looking for somewhere to have a drink. Sorry, Monique. I keep trying to answer this, but look how that white tail disappears. Oh, and she stopped for a rest stopped for a sit down in that pan. Okay, I hope I can get through here. Oh. Bryan, do you think you can push through here if I duck this around? Cool, thank you. put up with. You have no idea. Right, Monique, I don't think, let me finish this sentence. I don't think the leopards have the level of voluntary control over their tail, or as much as we think they do. I think they can control the swing to an extent, but I think those little twitches and so on are subconscious. Look how she's sniffing around the western edge of her mom's territory. I'm sure it's her mom she's smelling. There, look at those tail twitches. Do you think she controls that? Because I don't. I've seen leopards mess up their hunts before because the animals spotted their tail twitching. It's like they just can't quite keep it still. And it's a crucial part of them. Oh, she's flaming grimacing there. Hard to see because we don't have a front-on visual, but she is flaming grimacing. Oh, bless you. Big Shadow. Look at the way it twitches. So it's a crucial part of their balancing act, acting as a rudder, as a stabilizer, as a balance beam for when they, or a counterbalance when they walk along the branches of trees and the boughs of trees. And quite a useful way of propelling them and balancing them when they change direction. But look at that. Do you think she has control over that? I think it's reacting to some kind of stimulus. And all of us know that when a big cat or a little cat, or domestic cats as well there, she's flaming grimacing again. She's definitely smelling something interesting there. And it's almost certainly a leopard. And I think if we watch her, she's going to scent mark on that tree in response. We all know that an angry cat thrashes its tail. Scraping her feet. And on the subject of visual communication, as she walks away from us, oh, bless you, girl, you can see how the backs of her ears are highlighted in black. And Darlene, yes, in their own way, it's not quite like the eye spots on the back of Tiger's ears, but that black is also a visual communication cue for these animals. Oh, I know this section. I've been through here with elephants' herds before. Guys, we could lose her in here. I'm hoping not. She's walking towards... Oh, she's walking all over the place. I was about to say she's walking towards the road, and unfortunately she's not. She's walking deeper into this thicket. So this could be our last view. I hope not. I'm going to try my absolute best to stay with her. It means a little bit of bundu bashing, though, for all of us. And I'm trying to remember. I found a path through here the last time, but I think it's going to be safest to go onto the road and around. Think we can duck under here, Bryan? We manage. So yes, Darlene, the black serves to highlight the visual communications, that messages that are passed along by the ears themselves. And the good news is, as she's moving through here, I've never seen her go north into Buffelshoek from here. This is the boundary of her territory, as far as I know. Not a silly theory at all. Having chatted about the white tip to her tail, Anna would like to know whether it's something that might attract something like curious calves or foals. I really don't think that's a silly theory. I don't think it's likely, personally. I think I'm going to go in here. See if I can find her here. So it's not an impossibility. We know that certain animals use lures. Certainly fishes do. I'm going to check here. Yeah. Okay, sharp. Sorry, just communicating to Aubrey what I'm doing. We know that certain fish species use lures, birds do it, certain mammal species do it. There's no reason why it might not be a factor. I don't think so, but I certainly don't think it was a silly question. I think that calves and foals are less curious and more nervous than anything else. Ouch, I found a thorn tree. Or a thorn tree found me. I think she's gone flat again, somewhere in the thicket. Trying not to scratch or damage the VR rig either. Keep your eyes peeled, everybody. I need your help. Let me know if you spot her, because I'm trying to dodge plants at the same time. This is where this path comes out, is here. I've walked this block so many times looking for Mr. Tingana during Big Cat Week. So I know roughly where the paths come out. Doesn't mean she didn't go lie down somewhere though. It's not her there, is it? Go, that tricky leopard. Duh. That's awkward. She's right there, watching me drive circles round her. Hello, girl. Yay! I'm really glad we managed to not lose her. There's a couple of very brave Franklins who I'm not sure they've seen her yet. This could be entertaining. They are on the menu, but it's unlikely. Let's just see if they... I don't think they've even noticed her. Or maybe they have. I've mentioned that Shadow has a particularly full belly. And Rain, you were wondering how often they eat. Well, it depends on the size of the meal. They're opportunist leopards, so she could have contemplated going for one of these Franklin if she was in the mood. Generally, if it's a big meal, you're looking at about once every 3 days. But if it's and by big meal, for a small leopard female like Shadow, I'm actually talking something like a steenbok or a duiker could actually count as a big meal. Look at those green eyes of hers. Very unique coloured eyes the Shadow has. At which point she scrunches them close. She does look like her mother, Shadow. I must say, you can see the genetic similarities. Do you know, those Franklins walked right past her, having had that long discussion about the white tip to the tail. They walked right past her without her even noticing. So big meal, sorry, to get back to Rain's question. Rain, a big meal like an impala, for example, a female impala, a leopard can feast on a small leopard like this can feast on for about 5 days before moving off to rest and digest its meals. And that we saw with Karula, her mother, a couple of weeks ago. She's looking very, very healthy. It's so nice to see her having a quick foot rub. Quite often when cats like Shadow lick their feet like that, it's a prelude to standing up. In this case, however, I actually think that she's walked through a couple of thorns. I noticed as she was disappearing, she kept stopping and shaking her feet and licking the underside. And I think she just walked through maybe a patch of what we colloquially term davelkeys, which any child walking around barefoot in South Africa is very familiar with. You spend your childhood plucking them out of your toes. They come with a certain itchy, burny feeling as well, and her pads are a little bit thick for those, but some of the bigger species of devil thorn might lodge themselves between the pads of her toes and just irritate her a little bit. She looked up at the sound of a spider hunting wasp there. Interesting to see their reactions. Shadow's quite a stocky leopard. She's short, but she's quite stocky. So Anna, I mentioned that Karula's quite an older girl at around 11 to 12, and Shadow at 9 years old is also approaching what I would call senior status. Anna wants to know what the lifespan of a leopard is in the wild. It depends, first of all, if it's a male or a female. So with all big species of cats, the male's lifespan is slightly shorter than the female's. Mvula at 11 years old is starting, or coming up to 11, is starting to get to the stage that he would be considered an old male and past his prime. And usually the life expectancy for males is roughly around sort of 13, 14 at the most. But I would say closer to 11, 12 is the average out here. For females, it might be a little bit longer, but I must say, I've just was last night reading the messages of a group that we have where all the guides communicate their different sightings, and on that group they'd sent through pictures of a mysterious female that had just popped up in one of the properties, and the guides were chatting about who she was, and she was eventually identified as a female born in 1998, which would make her, what is that, which year are we in again? 2016, make her 18. So an 18-year-old female, apparently on her death's door. She was looking very thin. All of her teeth had fallen out. That is very old for a female leopard. But it does happen, apparently, even in the wild, that they can live up to 18, 20. So Karula, the wonderful queen of Djuma, has a long way to go yet. Now, if Karula is the queen of Djuma, as we discussed when I first thought this was Karula, that was what I was told on the radio. But when I first approached her, we said Karula is the queen. And if she is the queen, then I guess that makes Shadow the princess of Arathusa and Simbambili. So she's inherited part of her mother's territory on her mother's western boundary. And strangely enough, we now know that this patch, this block, between Sandy Patch and Boyatella main access, and then down Impala Plains, that is their territorial boundary. And of course, Brent had that amazing sighting of the two of them sitting, grumbling at each other, Shadow and Karula, right on that boundary on the power lines. And it's the wonderful thing about these live safaris and following the stories of these animals for as long as we have, is the fact that we can figure stuff like that out. You'll also notice that I'm keeping my voice down, talking into the microphone as much as possible. It's just so that we don't impact too much on the sighting for the other guests. And I'm just going to take this opportunity to be quiet for a little bit, and we can just sit and observe the beauty of her for the moment. Having a quick rest. And she's out on her own, and leopards typically are solitary big cats, unlike the highly sociable lions. And Lorraine, you were wondering if the leopards are always alone. Well, the answer is not always no, but yes, they are solitary animals by nature. So the only time that you're going to see them, typically in the company of another for any extended period of time, is first of all when they are mating. So that's a sort of a time period of about between 5 to 7 days that they will spend inseparable, the male and the female. And then of course females with cubs, and that can be up to 2 years. So especially for male cubs, they will stay with their mothers for up to 2 years at a time. The females tend to gain independence a little bit faster than that. So you're looking at about 1.5 years that female cubs spend with their mothers. And then sometimes, ever so often, you get cases of leopards associating around a kill. So quite often, because obviously this female is known to the other leopards in the area, and the dominant males of the area, their territory will overlap that of several different females. So, for example, Tingana, that we were talking about earlier, his territory overlaps with at least that of Shadow, Karula, and Kwatile in this particular area, at least, probably as well as Tundi's, who moves about further south and to the east of our Traverse area. And that's Shadow's sister, by the way. And they will, of course, then know each other because they know each other's scent, and usually when it comes time for mating, that's usually the leopard that they mate with is the one around that area. So often, even when the female's not in estrus, or you will get such situations where they share carcasses, they're quite happy to share kills, and even cases where the males will share the kill with the female and her cubs, especially if he thinks, or only really, if he thinks that he is the father of those cubs. Whether or not he really is a question that's always up for debate. There's even cases of mothers and their adult daughters and their grandchildren sharing carcasses or kills and feeding off them. So that for the most part, they are by nature purely solitary. I would say most of the time that you see a leopard, it's going to be on its own, but you do get those rare situations where they are together. And the most leopards I've ever seen in a sighting has been 4. I know a couple of guides who've seen 7 in one sighting, but that's very unusual. So, Darlene, next time you see this leopard, you want to know how you might be able to identify her. So, Darlene, you know that... sorry, I've just lost my train of thought. Oh, you know that Karula has a wow written between her eyes, but you're wondering what identifying features Shadow has. Well, she's got a V notch out of her right ear, And the scientific way of identifying leopards, which is to look at the top spot patterns on her nose, if you are close enough to be able to do that, of course. She has a 4-3 spot pattern, so 4 spots on the one side, 3 on the other. She's also been identified as having 2 necklaces, sort of stripe patterns around the base of her throat that look like jewel necklaces. But Darlene, that's of course if you get a really close look at her. I'm going to give you a slightly different way. To me, Shadow has a slightly flattened nose, slightly flattened face, and the sort of very green-blue eyes. She does actually, to me, look very similar to her mother. I would really like it if she'd have a look at us now, but of course she's in mid cat nap. It's really more of the impression of the animal that you get, and that comes with time and spending more hours with the animals themselves. And of course our regular viewers at this point can identify a leopard at the snap of a finger and have spent so much time watching them and have become so familiar that it's easy for them. But for newer viewers, it will take a little bit of time, but I promise you could get to know them. There you can see a little bit of a notch in her ear. You'll get to recognize them fairly easily. Now, we don't always get the sighting right straight away. And bear in mind, of course, that when we drive up to a leopard sighting, first of all, a lot of the time we've been told who we expect it to be, but also you're concentrating on 50 million other things, and it's only really when you stop and let the leopard look at you that you actually have a moment to identify them properly. There you go. You can sort of see what I mean about her nose. She's got a very differently shaped face. And like all big cats, they have a range of vocabulary. They're part of the Panthera family, which means that they can roar. But Angela would like to know if they purr. And yes, they do. They do purr. They can purr. It is much deeper than the sound that you would hear from your domestic cats or your domestic pets. And in fact, oh, she's up. Almost sounds like a growl. Where is she going to decide to go? I love watching leopards move, the way they walk and then rest, and then walk and then rest. She just phlegm and grimaced again. I know it was hard to see. So I think she's definitely either smelling a male or she's smelling mom. And Angela, the big cats have quite a range of their vocabulary. Just make sure I'm not going to go into Texan's way. So leopards can roar, and that's what we refer to when we hear that sawing sound. That, oh, I can't do it. I'm not going to try. I'm not going to try. I'm not going to embarrass myself. So that's the sawing sound that we've spoken of before. It's the equivalent of a roar that a lion might give. The one big cat that cannot do that is the cheetah. And that's why it's not part officially of the Panthera family. It is a separate family all of its own, although it still counts as one of the big cats. Where did she go again? Oops. Here she comes. Cheetah, instead of roaring, they chirp. They make chirping sounds. It's awesome to see. She's going to move into a really thick patch of knob thorns here. This is why leopards are so hard to track. This is what they do. They wander off the nice sandy paths Shame, she's still got thorns in her feet. And they go wandering into these dense thickets covered in leaf litter. They barely leave a track. And then they change direction. So you can't even pick a direction where the tracks go in and guess where they're going to come out, because they do the exact opposite of what they expect them to do. That's what makes life fun, though. It makes it a challenge. I'm just moving up so that Aubrey can see as well. I just want to know if she's going to lie down or if she's going to carry on. I can still see her moving. She's moving through a little bit to the right there. Here she goes. I have made an error in the route I've chosen and blocked myself off completely. Should be okay though, I can see quite an easy path out of here. Let's go get her. Yay, I'm so glad we got to spend a little bit of time with Shadow this afternoon. Dogs. Since we do have Taxon to thank largely for the discovery of the particular leopard, I'm just going to let him go through. We actually got the prime position to view her earlier, so I'm just going to let these two guides go ahead of us for a moment. Just polite. Just good manners. What was I chattering about? Oh, their vocabulary. So the most common sound that leopards will make is that sawing sound. They can also make almost like a chirping contact call. And I think we could lose her at this point. There she comes. Ah, well spotted, Bryan. I didn't even see her coming through that way. Grace with which she walks. So comfortable with the presence of the vehicles around us. It's one of the things that makes the Sabi Sands one of the best places to view big cats, is the level to which they've habituated to the presence of safari vehicles and the presence of people, so that the impact that the vehicles have on their lives is negligible, and people get to have a really special opportunity to observe them. And of course, ultimately, their future, in terms of the conservation of these animals as a species, their future lies in tourism, because tourism is where the financial ability to look after these creatures comes from. So the fact that they are so wonderfully comfortable with the car's presence doesn't mean they're not wild. Don't get me wrong, they are still wild animals. and they are still to be respected, and you should never be blasé about that. But it is a special way of observing them. Cat? No, I haven't. I have never seen leopards fighting for territory. And Kat, who's watching in Tampa, you were wondering if we've ever observed that. It's actually quite unusual. She's stopped in the road, just taking a moment to urinate. Oh, no, sorry, defecate. There she goes. Now, I don't want to drive on top of her, obviously, so I'm just giving her some space. Hopped onto the termite mound there. Just move up for Aubrey. So, Kat, it's actually very unusual for leopards to come to physical blows. Look at that flame and grimace. Awesome. Oh, that makes her look so vicious. So that motion, for new viewers, is known as a phlegm and grimace. It's when they pull their top lips up and back like that. And it's almost like they're snarling, but it's not. They're not being aggressive in any way. It's a way of opening up the vomeral nasal organ on the roof of their mouth, or what is known as the organ of Jacobson, to simplify. She's going to rub her cheek on that branch there. You can see it moving. I can't reposition at the moment. We just have to... Oh, I can see its tail coming up. No, she's gone back that way. I just have to wait for her to move around before we reposition. Don't want to drive on top of her, obviously, or in her personal space. So that phlegm and grimace pulls the scent particles and actually opens up the organ that sits on their palate or the roof of their mouth and draws the scent in. And you can imagine it as almost tasting the smell that they're experiencing. We have it as well. Human beings have it as well, but it's exceptionally reduced in people. So it doesn't function nearly as well in human beings. In fact, we barely have the nerve pathways to our brain anymore. Now, interestingly enough, I think the last time I saw Shadow, if I'm not mistaken, was somewhere around this particular area. And we had just been asked a question about the way that hyenas and leopards interact. And Shadow was fast asleep at the time. In this block. This is exactly where she was. She was in this block here. And as I was asking, or asked a question about the way leopards and hyenas interact, these two hyenas came out of nowhere and walked straight up to her, nearly stood on her. And Alan, you were wondering how leopards protect themselves when they sleep. One way is to sleep up in trees, but they don't do it nearly as often as you think they do. I would say only about 30% of our leopard sightings have been in trees, if not less. Ways they protect themselves is having really good... I don't want to drive over these logs. There's probably snakes in them. I don't want to crush any snakes underneath those dead logs. Sorry, Alan. I will update you in a moment. I just want to concentrate on looping around. But Alan wants to know... Oh, she's gone flat. How they protect themselves when they sleep by being very alert is the best answer. So by constantly, even though they look completely fast asleep, by just being a little bit more aware of their surroundings. Here we go. Thank you, Shadow. Awesome. So this is very close, actually, to where the hyenas nearly encountered her. And she was clearly, I mean, she was in a very deep sleep. And the hyenas just stepped close to her and obviously made a noise. And instantly, the speed of her reflexes carried her up and away in about 2 seconds flat. No, 2 split seconds flat. So they're very, very fast, Alan, is probably the best answer. Alert and fast. And for the most part, they are far faster than... Sorry, guys, I'm just turning the game drive channel down so I can hear myself think. For the most part, they are faster than pretty much any other creature out here. And when you first taught about the speeds of the different animals, you're taught that a leopard covers 22 meters in a second. That's about roughly 66 feet in 1 second. And that, I promise you, I've had leopards run past me before that I've startled while I've been walking. You're barely aware of what's happened by the time that thing has gone past you. They're incredibly quick. And of course, then they can retreat straight up trees, because even and lions can climb trees, but they're not nearly as secure and safe, especially on slightly thinner branch trees where they might fall out. But I have also seen a leopard trapped up a tree for a day or two at a time by lions moving about underneath it. Darlene, in terms of the way that these leopards hunt, I would say Darlene wants to know if they hunt purely visually or if there is a sense of smell involved as well. In terms of how they find their prey and they hunt their prey, I'm not sure that their olfactory senses are involved that much in terms of finding prey. So I think they rely a lot on sight mostly, and especially hearing over smell, I would say, when they're at that point at which they're going to start hunting something. But then also, I don't know that we know exactly how well their sense of smell functions. I think that their smell is incredible. Here we go, she's up. Up and moving. Darlene, what was I about to say? I keep losing my train of thought because I'm so distracted by just watching the way that she moves, that lithe figure. Darlene, they say that animals basically see what they smell almost. It's like scent trails moving through the air, which is always a fascinating image for me. So maybe they do use their smell as well. They probably do. Probably all factors into the way that they hunt. But for me, the way that I've watched leopards hunt, it seems to be largely visually and orally based. So they hear what's happening. Time to start moving before she pulls a leopard on me and sneaks off. Shadow is hunting, although as an opportunist she might take advantage if she bumps into something. I think it's more that she is marking her territory at this point. Find an easy way through on this side. Haha, easy way through is all fine and well. So she looks particularly full-bellied, but at least we know she's in marvelous condition. She does look really good. This is where I had her the last time. This is exactly where that story occurred that I told you about with the hyena. Where did she go? You got that way? That way? Oh. Did you see her go past that way? Oh, okay. Cool. Bryan tells me I'm going in completely the wrong direction and that she's changed and gone off that way. Oh well, let's go find her that way then. It's amazing how they can choose the way that they walk. I know where she goes from here. There's a pathway that she quite often follows. This way. That makes sense. Oh, and there's definitely a distinct rain feel in the air. Oh, can we do this? Yes, we can. Oh, I think I saw movement there. There's a distinctly rainy feeling in the air. Whoops. The old clutch leg gets a bit tired after a while. Where did you go to, Shadow? Sorry for the noise, everyone. Just the way it has to be, and I promise you I'm choosing trees that are young saplings that will spring back up. I'm not doing them any damage, and I'm making sure that I avoid the rarer species of trees that are less resilient. Where did she go? I need to stop and listen for alarm calls. Just taking my earpiece out. No, I'm not sure where exactly she went. Disappeared off faster than I could see her, like the shadow that she can be. Somewhere into this book. guys. I'm just going to stop to chat to Taxon quickly. Whew. She found it this way, but I don't know, I can't, I've lost visual of her. I don't know whether she went.
There you go, on top of the camera.
Oh, that's awkward. That's very awkward. Sorry, Shadow. Wow, that's unfortunate. I was just saying to Tex, and I don't know whether she went left or right around the termite mound. The embarrassing reality is that she went onto the termite mound. It's at times like these where honestly you just have to have a good laugh at yourself. You really don't have any other option because you're so busy concentrating on 10 million things at once and trying to look in every direction that sometimes you miss the most obvious. Hello, gorgeous. You must think we are the silliest things out here. Oh goodness, I'm never going to hear the end of that from Taxon. Never ever again. The time I lost the leopard, except that I was right underneath her. Oh, that is hilarious. Well, we found her again, which I'm happy about, even if it came at my own expense. I need to redeem myself now. Next drive, I need to spot a leopard at 100 meters so that it's less embarrassing. Amazing how they managed to look that comfortable on the termite mounds. Speaking from experience, termite mounds are not that comfortable. They're actually very uncomfortable. Shame. Sorry, Shadow. I would never have driven there if I'd known you were there. All fine. She's perfectly relaxed, quite contented on her viewpoint, observing the goings-on. I imagine with a hint of humor, if leopards are capable of such things. That looks so uncomfortable. Sitting with her elbow right on a big lump, but making a beautiful picture for us to look at. Now she's come across from, as I said earlier, from Simbambili, where presumably she had a meal quite close to One-Eyed Pan. And I hesitate to join in the speculation, but I'd like to get another good view of her stomach. Because, I don't know, but she looks as though she might be bulging in odd places as well. And if she is, or it's a little bit early. With leopards, you can only tell towards the really end stages of their pregnancy that they're pregnant. If she is pregnant from her last mating with Tingana, that was 2 months ago. So it would still be a bit soon for us to be able to tell. Maybe she just had a really good meal. She's definitely eaten recently. She's looking very full. So that might just be it. She might just be full of food. We'll just have to wait and see in that respect. But for those of you who did have the update that she might have cubs, we can safely confirm that she doesn't have cubs. Not yet, anyway. Whether or not she's pregnant remains to be seen. But she does not have cubs denning around the Arathusk sign. Against the rainy sky. And what's even more exciting about this afternoon is the fact that we might even have rain this evening. So we've had Shadow the leopard and some more relief from the drought as a possibility hanging over the horizon. It's definitely an exciting afternoon to be out and about. What's useful about sightings like this is next time we see her tracks wandering into this block, be able to have a rough idea as to, oh, look how gorgeous that is. Look at those eyes. We'll at least be able to have a rough idea as to where she might go in some of her regular haunts that she prefers to wander through and along. For now, our beautiful spotted cat is resting peacefully on top of a termite mound, and I believe that Stef is with some other wonderful spotted characters, so let's head over there for now.
What a treat spending as much time as you have with Shadow. You're absolutely privileged, and I must say I'm very envious of what you've been doing. But we've decided to come through to the hyena den, and it's full of action at the moment. It looks like all the different sets of cubs are here. We've got 3 adults in attendance. And what's been happening is this older hyena has been moving from hole to hole, visiting the cubs that are in each den, and always with much fuss. You can see what she's busy doing. She's slowly moved up to these 2 cubs that you can see in shot now, and hasn't quite elicited a greeting yet. Now you can see she's indecisive, doesn't quite know where she wants to go. Ah, there we go. Decided that lying down was the best. Full belly. All of them have got full bellies. It looks like they ate well either last night or today. And we'll catch up with you in a little bit because Shadow's on the move again, and I'm sure you want to see where she's going.
Shadow's up and about, and off she goes again. Stopping to look where she's going. Take the log. bit ahead of me. So she doesn't feel like I'm crowding her. I see her indecision as to where she's going to go next. Backwards, forwards. She's heading to that termite mound on main access. Let's see if I'm right. I have to confess, I'm a little bit disoriented in this block. Not entirely sure where I am, as evidenced by the fact that I completely missed the leopard looking down at me from the termite mound. But I do feel a certain sense of deja vu. Yes, Dr. Debbie, in a description of the termite mound that we saw earlier that she was lying on, Dr. Debbie says, would it be an accurate... Oh, she's turning urine spraying. We wanted to know if it would be an accurate description to describe a termite mound as rock cement. Absolutely, exactly what it's like. It's hugely uncomfortable, in my experience. It's very lumpy. Try and get ahead of her. She decides where she's going to go. Where's she gonna go? I think she's on her way to that termite mound. We're about to pop out on main access. How's it, Andrew?
How are you doing, Jim?
Good, and you?
Oh, thanks so much for this today.
No problem. I'm going to go pop out onto the road. You should be able to get a good view of her from there. Termite mound I mentioned earlier. This would be very interesting to see if she stops there. It goes to show that there are more creatures of habit than we realize. This is the exact path she used last time we tracked her here as well. She's going to walk out straight in front of us. Oh, there's definitely rain coming. Here she comes. I wonder if she can sense it as well. She must be able to. Look at that belly. Very full. You're in scent marking the guari bushes. Straight towards the termite mound. Is she going to go lie down there, or is she just going to scent mark? And she goes. fascinating. Yep, she's lying down. I'll just show you before I get a better position. On the termite mound we predicted she was going to end up on. Andrew, she's not a pansy here on this. Oh, she's up again. She's on her way to you. Sniffing, scent marking, urine spray, and back over the other side. Awesome stuff. At some point, I might have to stop, leave the sighting, because I don't know if Steph's shown you that, but that's coming. Look at that, it's beautiful. That is so beautiful. It's still a long way away though, we should be fine for now. That is rain, ladies and gentlemen. Much, much needed rain. That is absolutely stunning. Beautiful. Where did she go? There she goes, wandering, moving exactly down the path that essentially, mind you, divides the territory between herself and her mom. Guys, it's getting very dense in here. I have experienced this block of old. I'm going to try and stay with her, but yeah, I can see her going up here, just finding a way around without smashing any of the equipment or the VR rig. But at least we've had a really nice, decent afternoon and a certain amount of time spent with her. Oh, everywhere I look I see blockages. This might have been our last few moments with her. Thanks, Andrew. I'll try to stay with her. I've got to go bashing through some bushes again, and I need to concentrate because otherwise I miss the leopard. Right. You good there, Brian? I missed the leopard in front of me. Oh, there she is. Got her. Never mind. She's right there. Hello, antenna. You just not be in my eyes. Thank you. Andrew, she's Lalapansi again. Exactly in the direction where you were heading. I'm just going to shift around. Sorry, Brian. Just pop onto the other side of her. Oh, she's up again. She's keeping me busy. Oh, she's mobile southwest now. Fascinating to spend time and watch the way and the directions that they choose through the bush. thick in here, and I think while I navigate the pathways and the various obstacles like that log I just found, let's pop over to Stef and I'll catch up with you soon.
So nothing nearly as exciting as your leopard sighting is happening here at the hyena den. The grandma, I think she's possibly one of the oldest hyenas I've seen, is just falling asleep at the entrance to the den. The two baby cubs are doing the same thing. They went in, and on the right hand side we've got another adult and her two cubs that are, as far as we can see, nursing, because every now and again I just get this little black paw coming up from the den. The youngster, May, from last year, has come in and just literally had a sniff around and then carried on walking away. I think he's been keeping himself busy in the area adjacent to this den. And then we also had a monitor lizard, a white-throated monitor lizard, walk straight through the middle of these hyena, not a care in the world, and disappear underneath the tree trunk next to the vehicle. It's become a very humid afternoon. In the distance, probably no more than 20 kilometers away, we are seeing rain. All of this is a sheet of rain that hasn't quite made it to us yet. Doesn't look like it's very heavy, but it definitely is coming down, which is good. At least some portion of this drought-stricken province is getting some rain this afternoon. Hopefully tonight, as soon as the temperature cools down a little bit and the clouds drop a bit more, we can also get some of this rain. Now, this female's been very, very attentive, looking, always keeping an eye open in this direction. She's not looking at us, she's sort of looking past us to the one direction. As you can see from her full belly, her and all the adults we've seen, there were 3 adults when I got here, all have relatively full bellies. Not nearly as full as they can get, but definitely a good meal was had last night somewhere. We haven't found any remnants of that meal, but definitely some meat was eaten at some point. Either caught themselves or scavenged from another predator. And in this area, more likely a lion or a leopard. You can see that very prominent pathway from one den entrance to the next. It's being well trodden at the moment. And every time I've seen a hyena move from one den entrance to the next, they use that pathway. Almost to the exclusion of everything else. This female's just lifted her head again. Testing the wind. The wind is coming from blowing from the east and from the south. As far as I can tell, this hyena was the attacker in the fight that you witnessed, or you may have witnessed with Jamie. For those of you who are just joining the show now, a couple of days ago, a hyena was set upon. It looked to be disciplined. It didn't look like it was a rank takeover or anything that serious, but it was quite seriously mauled. And this was one of the aggressors in that confrontation. This old female. You'd never say it. She's only got one bottom canine. Her teeth are all blunt. And you can see, although she's full, you can see her hip joint sticking out of the back of her leg there. She's not in poor condition, not at all. And obviously still a very productive, high-ranking female. Have a look at that paw. So often we're tracking on the road and we say there's a hyena track, and what gives it away is that half-moon foot or the toe pad that you can see very evident there. That half moon toe pad, that one lying right at the top, is one of the defining characteristics of a hyena track, as is the presence of a nail. And then also, if you have a look at their plantar pad, the pad that's at the back of the foot, you will see that it's slightly skew. It's slightly not perpendicular to the toes, and that's also another giveaway. So half moon track, the presence of claws, and then that slightly skewed off plantar's pad. Breathing quite heavily, a belly full of meat generates some discomfort for these animals. Not only does it ferment and create gas and bubbles, and I'm sure a few cramps along the way, but it also is quite warm. And having such a full belly pushes against her diaphragm, so she can't inhale as deeply as what she normally does. Have a look at that. You saw her tongue fall out of her mouth there, and that's because she doesn't have the canine on that side. And the other canine that she's got in her mouth, you can see there as Tebs punches in. Not sharp anymore. Just years and years of just chewing on bones and cracking bones open to get to the marrow. Hunting. There you can see the missing canine and all those wedge-shaped premolars that she's got in the back of her mouth that she'll use to crack and tear open carcasses. Very, very strong teeth. Have a look at that there in the back of the mouth. There you go. Rows and rows of premolars. I think hyena only have one molar, one tooth on and top at the bottom each side. The rest are all premolars, canines, and incisors. Let's see what she goes and does. When we got here, she did a very similar thing. Rainbow's asked a nice question. I was wondering the same thing. What happens when it rains? Does it flood inside these dens? And absolutely, it does flood inside the dens. As to what they do they move on, or do they go and find another den site? Good question there. I'd suppose that they try and excavate the water, and if it floods too bad, they just go to one of the other den sites. This particular clan has got 3 communal dens that I know of. All within probably a 1.5 kilometer radius from where we are right now, and they could quite easily go and excavate either of them into a new den site if this one floods or gets too full of parasites, is inhabited by a snake of some sort. And on that note, Jamie actually asked me to share some news with you. Jamie went to go and investigate the other communal den site, the one on Gallagher Shortcut Road, and there is a very pervasive smell of death coming out of the one den. Jamie's convinced that something is dead and rotting inside one of the den sites. Now, she stuck her head in there with her torch on her phone, but didn't get very far and couldn't see exactly what had died inside there, and not knowing if it was meat that was brought into the den or if it's a dead cub inside there or a dead adult, and not knowing what killed it, she wisely decided that she wasn't going to climb into that den to go and find out. But she did ask me to pass on that piece of news for those of you who have been following the show the last couple of days. And as soon as we can, of course, we'll try and relay what and where and how and what it looks like. But for now, this female is once again just sticking her head into the den, is making a plaintive cry, and there is no protest coming from that other adult. Here comes one of the cubs. I don't quite know what's going on. She's now climbed into the den. Is not making any more noise. Now that mother there is taking some interest again. Licking herself or licking one of the babies, licking herself. There is a baby there. Difficult to see and tell you exactly what's going on inside there. And while this sort of unfolds itself, yeah, now the one cub has now come out. So that old female has now gone into the den with some youngsters, and this female has now come out of the hole with the one youngster in tow, and is now going to go into the other den. And now she's making this plaintive moaning call. Youngster has gone in with her to go and investigate what is going on. There, that baby's making another whining call again. And goes and lies down. Looks like the baby's whining for some milk. Yeah, it looks like it wants to go and feed. That's exactly what she's doing. They're hidden behind some leaves. And while that youngster's sleeping, and while we still have some time with Shadow, Jamie would like to have you over with her for a little bit, just so that you can see some more of Shadow before we miss her for a few days again. And I'm sure there'll still be time for one or two more chats with you before we close the show off in a while.
We found Shadow again. And by we, I mean Bryan found Shadow again. Thank goodness. I was about to actually give up the chase and start moving back to the road when Bryan spotted her sleeping up against this log very peacefully. And what an awesome treat we have had today to spend as much time as we have with Shadow without her disappearing off into a thick patch of vegetation and giving us the slip. Also been fascinating to watch the way she uses regular pathways through the bushes. Look at that. Look how cool that is. So what's going on there? That is such an awesome sighting. It's a African harrier hawk that is raiding a marula and probably raiding a bird's nest. That's what it's looking for in there. It's trying to get its feet in. At least I think that's what's happening. It's definitely a harrier hawk just by the black and white stripes underneath the tail. It's very, very far away and very dark. Oh, I wonder if it's not stuck on something. Doesn't look like it's hanging upside down. Really hard to see in the dark like this. No, I think it is raiding a nest. I think it's trying to get its foot in a hole. So obviously found a bird's nest, something like a lilac-breasted roller. The one that we saw with Scott in the marula tree hole, in the hollow out there. And it's trying to find an angle to be able to, and we've spoken before about the Djuma Cams, or the harrier hawks, having double-jointed leg joints that can bend backwards as well as forwards as a way of sneaking them into a crevice in a tree and raiding the bird's nest involved. That is a really awesome sighting. Very cool. I had no idea that they operated this late into the evening either. So that's been a learning curve as well. not often that you get to see them actively raiding the nests. And while we were watching the harrier hawk, Shadow appears to have woken up. And while we're looking and taking this opportunity with this beautiful leopard, Darlene, you said that since you've started watching SafariLIVE, you've fallen in love with the beauty, grace, and elegance of the leopards that we see. And I'm thrilled to hear that. They are definitely, I would say, of all of the animals, probably the most aesthetically pleasing. They really are so perfect to look at and such a joy to watch. And of course, the wonderful thing about the SafariLIVE drives is that you can fall in love with their characters as well. Really good questions, since we've had that harrier hawk in the sighting, as well as, or with Shadow. And Wayne in Philadelphia, you wanted to know if any predatory bird would follow a leopard through the bush. As far as I know, not necessarily follow a leopard through the bush. Generally what they will do is they will, if there's some kind of leopard kill, they might hang around in the trees, and you usually find it's something like either a tawny eagle or a batalier. They tend to be the birds that spot carrion first, especially if it's, as a leopard kill often is, hidden in either thick vegetation or tucked away in the boughs of a tree. Sorry, a fly just flew up my nose. They're amazingly accurate. So Wayne, no, not as far as I know. You can sometimes follow those bird species to leopard kills, so something like a tawny eagle, but there are bird species that often associate with mammal species, and the best example I can think of is the pale chanting goshawks and the honey badgers. And very often you see those two creatures associated, but that is more towards the arid areas of South Africa. And Shadow's gone back to sleep, and Stef is still with our wonderful hyena clan. So let's have a look at what they're up to.
Now, looking at the older female that went into the den just now. She's now come out of the den, and she is intensively licking the two youngsters. It looked like she was nursing a little bit just now, but I really couldn't see. What she's really has been doing is just constantly licking at both of the little babies. You can see them there. Actually look brand new. Yes, they are tiny. They are so cute at this age. And you can see she's getting very hot. It must be very hot inside that den. There's not a lot of air movement at all, and it is really quite humid, obviously in anticipation of the storm. One mother has come off onto the left-hand side here and is nursing a single cub. She looks very content, a very happy hyena mommy there. And Lindsay's asked, obviously looking at how massive this termite mound is, and Lindsay has asked, what causes these termite mounds to go dormant, which allow the hyena to make dens in them? Lindsay, that is a source of much debate amongst entomologists, is do termite mounds actually go dormant? Are there a succession of queens? Do termites go through a succession of queens and then let the termite mound die out, and then all of a sudden does the termite mound come active again? And all of these questions are asked just because termite mounds can be some of the most unbelievably old structures out here. I mean, on top of some of these termite mounds, trees are growing on top of, not the termite mound around the tree, that are 200, 300, 400 years old. And the termite mounds are still active. So that's a good question there, Lindsay. It's one that we haven't really figured out yet. Is this termite mound active only on a small portion of it? Is the entire thing active and they've just sort of barricaded off the hyena den? Is it inactive now but will become active at a later stage? All good questions, Lindsay, some that I don't really have the answers to right now. I do have the headlights of my car on. We don't spotlight hyena at night time. Not at den sites, at least, anyway. Not because it does anything, not because we're making them any more of a target. It's literally just our policy that we don't spotlight at den sites, just sensitive to the fact that there are youngsters here. And those youngsters may or may not be used to cars just yet. As you can see, these hyenas are very relaxed with our presence. We parked probably about 15 to 20 yards away from the base of the termite mound and probably 25 yards away from the actual den site, so far away from any of the action happening. You can see that youngster's hearing me talk or listening to something in the bush. We actually thought we were going to get some decent rain today. There were clouds building up in this bruised sky. Myself and Tebs have had a pretty quiet drive, barring some giraffe that we saw in the beginning of the drive, and then spending some decent time with a nice zebra. And then, of course, the highlight of the drive was spending all that time with that tree squirrel that was foraging on the ground with us. But definitely from Tebs and myself and the hyenas at the hyena den here, we are going to bid you farewell and a good night or a good day, if that's what you're busy with at the moment, the rest of your day. And we'll definitely see you for tomorrow morning's sunrise safari. We'll be at it again. And from my side and from Thames' side, goodbye.
And ladies and gentlemen, in the last few moments of our sunset safari, you can see Shadow trying to catch moths and bugs flying around her. And in wonderful news, it is starting to rain on us, which is great to hear. I'm so happy that we're going to have a little bit more in the way of moisture when we wake up tomorrow morning. Are those moths bugging you, girl? Jem, I know that you missed most of the sunrise safari, and no, it wasn't Shadow I was tracking. It actually turned out to be Tingana. We just knew it was a big male. I thought it was Mvula. Turned out to be Tingana, who we tracked all the way down and then crossed into Torchwood. Well, thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for joining us, as well as to Bryan for his fantastic camera work, and the wonderful ladies in FC for all of their magical directing, and to Eugene as well. And thank you to you, the viewers, for all of your fantastic questions and comments that you have sent through. I'm going to say goodnight for now, and I'm going to say goodbye to Shadow because it's starting to rain and I need to get the cover on as quickly as possible, so I need to get out of this block. So bye-bye wherever you are in the world. Have a wonderful day.